So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our listeners. Welcome back to Hashtag So Good Vibes, ang vlog na punong-puno ng hashtag So Good News and hashtag So Good Insights.
Pero syempre, before we start, let's not forget to introduce ourselves first. My name is Micaela Rabanes from Las Piñas, and you can call me Mika.
I am Jasmine from Marikina, fresh from Japan. Konnichiwa!
Wow naman, my name is Justice from the beautiful land of Iloilo City.
Taray, Provincial Life. Ako naman si Joshua Tan from Bulacan.
Naps, rhyming. And last but not least, I am Luis Pulgar. So guys, a quick icebreaker muna tayo before we start. Part ng goals natin dito sa hashtag So Good Vibes ay makapagbigay ng insights about the world we live in now. Kung ano ba yung mga trending issues, the tea, at mga balita na nakaka-affect sa ating lahat. Okay, so I will mention some words or phrases tapos sasabihin niyo sa akin kung hashtag so good or hashtag so bad ba siya. So you might have seen a lot of purple lately, especially in social media, diba? Of course, this is in honor of the International Women's Month that is celebrated every year during March. Now guys, Women's Month, hashtag so good or hashtag so bad?
Syempre, loud and proud, hashtag so good. It is so refreshing to see women of all ages being celebrated. It is truly the rightful visibility we need at this time.
That's right, Nika. As women, we continue to experience societal struggles, and it is hashtag so good and so validating that we are able to recognize them. But of course, Women's Month is only part of a bigger fight that we need in order to truly abolish gender inequality.
I agree. As progressive as it sounds, if no concrete actions and steps are taken beyond this, it only becomes performative in a sense that it does not hold any true value and activism for women's rights.
I love it! Ika nga, abante babae. It's truly an interesting conversation as to how seemingly progressive initiatives can be perceived as performative. I remember nga in our last episode on environmental capitalism, how some brands and companies are able to convey false impressions about how their products are environmentally sound.
Yes, Luis. And as discussed, this concept was called greenwashing, and it was used as a marketing tactic to deceive consumers into believing that the company's products are eco-friendly or have a greater positive environmental impact than they actually do.
Well, as far as companies are concerned, I observe lang that this type of marketing strategy has been effective, especially in the business world.
It is interesting as to how corporations take their own initiatives in preserving the environment. This is where companies build sustainability into everything. Companies that take social responsibility seriously create value for all customers and employees by reducing waste and being eco-friendly in their workplace.
That's a good example. However, some companies do greenwashing, which we can't avoid in this world.
I also have an example that it is widely used, especially in this time of pandemic, which is the launching of e-commerce. Actually, I have enjoyed ordering online, especially on TikTok shops and Facebook Marketplace amidst the pandemic. It was really accessible as we can go out, right? I believe that it was one of the most effective marketing strategies that businesses do until now.
Can we also discuss why it is critical for businesses to adjust to the present political environment with these things in mind? Being politically appropriate is another factor that these firms take into account. What comments do you guys have on this?
Well, some woke businesses are speaking out because they understand that staying silent is more costly than deciding to support a cause. For instance, if someone criticizes a given company for having backward values, it can of course have a significant effect on other industries, and this would make them choose a stand.
However, we cannot rule out the possibility that they are also supporting the cause to protect their brand. This is because it is vital for these companies to succeed in order to maintain positive relations with the government. As Grant noted in his article, Business and Politics, a Relationship Under Challenge from 2022, he stressed that the importance of financial prosperity for a government's potential of winning re-election and how working mutually with the private sector may assist in accomplishing that.
Well, Let's discuss a recent event that occurred in the Philippines, particularly before and even after the 2022 elections. Filipinos who backed Leni Robredo's presidential bid compiled a list of kakamping businesses that they urged people to patronize.
Yes, and we're not suggesting that the only people who are politically correct and woke are those kakamping businesses and their followers. Rather, we are pointing out that people look for someone they can rely on. And of course, they will support since they fight for the same cause.
To put it simply, supporting LGBTQIA plus rights as an individual or as a company says a lot about how you perceive human rights in general and where corporate success will go next, aside from the support that those people give to companies that share their values. If you support the people, it goes without saying that you contribute to the prosperity of your society and businesses flourish in a culture where democratic principles are upheld. It's not about because it will affect the profitability of your business, but the welfare of your community.
And also, during the month of June, which is celebrated worldwide, we celebrate LGBTQIA plus individuals. Several corporate activities that try to support the cause go along with this celebration and acknowledgement of the difficulties faced by the LGBTQIA plus community. We should revisit the brief history of LGBTQIA plus activism to discuss its relevance, the cause's goals, and other related issues.
Before we discuss the history, I just want to ask if you guys know gender conforming pronouns.
Actually, in simple terms, gender conforming pronouns are personal pronouns that match your gender identity. It simply refers to them as a person's pronouns, which also implies that their gender identity is necessarily a preference. For example, I represent myself as she and her.
On my take naman, I use the pronouns she or her also.
We are the same, Jasmine and Justice. I also use the pronouns she and her.
I proudly present myself as he, him.
Well, I prefer using the pronouns he, him too.
I'm glad you guys know your gender conforming pronouns as if you have the knowledge of it. It avoids misgendering that leads to trauma responses and gender dysphoria.
Well, as the world becomes more inclusive of people's sexual orientation and gender identity, the letters within the LGBTQIA plus acronym have similarly evolved. The LGBTQIA plus acronym is used to describe either a person's sexual orientation or gender identity.
You have likely come across the acronym LGBTQIA plus or one of its variants before. Here, what each letter in this acronym means: lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, or aromantic, and the plus symbolizes other genders or sexual identities that are not already included in the acronym, such as pansexual or even gender fluid.
So let's go back to the past, guys. Do you have a background in the history of the LGBTQIA plus activism?
Actually, Mika, it reportedly started during the Enlightenment era in the 18th century, where it was a time when same-sex conduct was considered socially unacceptable. Moreover, cross-dressing was even considered acceptable among plays, including William Shakespeare.
Have you guys heard about the Stonewall riots where the word pride occurred in the LGBTQIA plus community?
Oh, I haven't heard about that. Can you discuss what movement and era it happened?
Well, it was called the Gay Liberation Movement, where an underground movement became publicly visible and where the rebellious counterculture began attracting national media attention. This counterculture was about rejecting heteronormativity and fighting the exclusion of gay and lesbians.
Grabe, it was too much pala that era, especially to the gays where they just want to be accepted.
True. That's why from 1972 until this present time, in order to be accepted and be the way to fight for the rights of different gender identity, LGBTQIA plus right movement occurred.
Yes, I've observed in every Pride March, marginalized groups have long carried out protests in the face of frustration and anger, standing up to the authorities, marching, chanting, using different mediums of art to voice pleasure and riot, make an impact.
The LGBTQIA plus community has consistently and courageously demanded equality over the last 6 decades using these tactics pala talaga, no?
If nowadays it is widely accepted, how do the corporate world do their initiatives in the LGBTQIA plus community and its rights?
Actually, it is a challenge for companies in assimilating people from various backgrounds and gender identities to feel included in the overall company culture.
On my side lang, I believe small behavior and language changes such as gender-coded language can help diverse individuals feel more included, and with that, we can respect their rights.
That's true. Kaya nga, there are ways they start to include LGBTQIA plus community, and it is initially from hiring. It is important to pay attention to avoid discrimination, such as companies do remove male or female boxes on hiring forms.
It's actually good that internally it was considered. I also read about company documents and employee handbooks that use gender neutral pronouns and use examples of queer couples in their writing. In this way, trans employees can work at an organization without daily experiences of being referred to by the wrong name and pronouns.
Ooh, just like we practice in the LSU, there are no dress codes already, which companies also do to further support the well-being of queer and trans individuals.
I also saw how some companies allow transgender employees to use the bathrooms that correspond to their respective gender identities.
It is really significant to individuals to build in benefits, policies, culture, and other practices that include and support queer and trans people, as it sends a clear message that you belong here, that you do not have to fight for your right to be treated equally to your peers, and its safety and well-being matters here in this corporate world.
Company initiatives do have a significance to the community talaga, no? But how about when the LGBTQIA plus activism happened? How do corporations engage to it?
Well, companies have been attempting to strengthen their internal policies and trademarks on LGBTQIA plus issues, such as using social media to position themselves as allies. To promote inclusivity and transparency, they also accept queer employees and clients internally.
More and more businesses are speaking about issues affecting the LGBTQIA plus community, even though there are still ongoing political arguments surrounding this topic. But do you guys agree that this increased public involvement is sufficient? Because according to a Harvard Business Review article, this enhanced public engagement is primarily due to quick changes in beliefs, and millennials and Generation Z are frequently at the forefront of these changes.
I think there is still a lot to be addressed. The World Economic Forum reported in 2017 that there is a significant loss of economic and social potential. If businesses increase their capacity to keep LGBTQIA plus expertise by the adoption of diverse regulations, it has been calculated that the US economy might grow by an additional $9 billion annually.
On the other hand, organizations that support LGBTQIA plus rights undoubtedly profit from their efforts. Apart from other citizens of the society who understand where they are coming from, LGBTQIA plus consumers endorse them. This is noteworthy since the LGBTQIA plus population has a high spending power.
The Philippine LGBT Chamber of Commerce, along with other agencies, carried out the Philippine Corporate SOGI Diversity and Inclusiveness Index study, which polled 100 corporations on their prohibitions on discriminative behaviors and promotion of fair access to employment practices. Actually, this was highlighted in a CNN Philippines report from 2018. Out of 100, they learned of 0 Philippine-based businesses with safeguarding measures against SOGI-based discrimination.
It's quite upsetting to hear that. It must be acknowledged that the debate has shifted as a result of the business world becoming a powerful advocate for the LGBTQIA plus rights. Competence in business must now take into account corporations' dedication to inclusive and progressive efforts as well as the effectiveness of those initiatives themselves.
The term rainbow capitalism is frequently used when talking about corporate performative acts on LGBTQIA plus issues. Let's talk about it.
According to Olsen of the website LGBTQ and All, rainbow capitalism, also known as pink capitalism, is a practice of businesses that profess to promote LGBTQ plus concerns, while in reality, producing goods for profit and capitalizing on a movement that is centered on business objectives.
Therefore, pride, in addition to being a protest, presents a chance for these firms to profit since their dedication was lacking.
Yes, and it has been mentioned that one of its expressions may be a business including a rainbow flag in its logo. It may also resemble a store advertising things with rainbow themes in June. In exchange, Pride loses its political significance because its members no longer have access to the space that was supposedly designated for them.
Even with donations, it's important to talk about situations like when a firm gives 100,000 pesos to an LGBTQIA plus group, despite the community's enormous purchasing power, which is in billions. These are the things that we might not have noticed, but they are important to the conversation and should be brought up.
As we want our discussion to be not just hashtag so good, but also hashtag so sensitive, especially to the community this issue is concerned with the most. We invited a very special guest to join us for today's episode.
Our guest is currently a second-year undergraduate student at De La Salle University, taking up AD major in Communication Arts and BS in Legal Management with a minor in Digital Marketing. As a student leader, they have been actively advocating for the LGBTQIA+ community as former Council of Student Sectors, LGBTQIA+ sector representatives of the DLSU Arts College Government, and former Commissioner of Gender Equality and Empowerment of the DLSU University Student Government. Now, they are currently serving as the batch president of FAST 2021, carrying alongside the experiences and advocacies they have collected from their years of service.
Alright, so with this, let us all welcome Ms. Moira Noel E. Polumbarit. And hi Moira, how are you today?
Hi guys, I'm doing well naman. I'm having just, a peaceful day here in DLST. I'm in campus. So, ayun lang. Hope you guys are having a great night as well.
Well, to start, Moira, have you encountered the use of LGBTQIA+ pride flag branding and marketing strategies of different brands and companies?
I have. So, as you guys know, like every June comes, it's Pride March. And that's when you see a lot of corporations like showing out their rainbows and showing out their logos in different variations of a rainbow, or releasing new merch that would typically cater to queer communities. And then, the problem kasi is even if it is a marketing strategy that can, number one, yes, be used for awareness for our community, it is also that double-edged sword na they can just be using this to commodify the fact that they can target these communities for their profit. So whenever I see it, I have mixed feelings kasi yes, you're giving us a spotlight right now, pero once this month ends, once the hype for you ends, since you're not really that knowledgeable about the struggles of the community, all that is going to go down the drain kasi it doesn't serve profit for some kinds of companies. Pero on the other side, there are a lot of, local businesses and small businesses that also use their platform as queer entrepreneurs themselves so that they could launch their creativity into the world. So, yeah.
So, we discussed earlier in the episode the practice of businesses that profess to promote LGBTQIA+ concerns while in reality producing goods for profit and capitalizing on movement that is centered on a business objective is called rainbow capitalism. What is your understanding about it, Ms. Moira?
Okay, so I actually done a lot of research and papers on rainbow capitalism. I was very, very passionate about going against rainbow capitalism itself. Kasi as a queer person, I don't want my existence to be a source of profit for another person. Kasi that is my identity. That is what makes me me. And I've gone through the years of gender dysphoria. I've gone through the pains of coming out. I've gone through the pains of just living my life as an existence that some people still deem unworthy. So for rainbow capitalist corporations to use my beliefs and my identity for their gain without trying to help the community in a very sustainable manner is very painful for the community. It's very damaging kasi they can very much, influence people who do not know the struggles of the community and just think na, oh, buying this rainbow pin is enough to help those that are hurting.
With this, Moira, what do you think are the consequences of rainbow capitalism, and who is the most affected by this?
Okay. So for the consequences of rainbow capitalism, the most affected are the queer community itself. Though there is that, all-encompassing effect on society na they think that that is enough. And the consequences of the capitalism and commodification itself is that it's damaging to the influence of what the struggles of the community is. Because it oversaturates what the community is going through a channel that isn't genuine. It is a commodified, driven act. So is this to say that if we sell something that is queer coded, that it is wrong? No, only if our intent is wrong, only if we do that for our personal gain. If it's something like, for example, you're doing this because you genuinely know and believe that whatever you're selling and whatever you're promoting, even on the media, shows like that, are for proper representation and actually goes to show the actual struggles and can benefit the community in a way na, it funds more treatment centers and rehabilitation centers for queer communities and queer individuals who are handling through trauma and abuse. And it is good. But it is considered rainbow capitalism if it's so surface level and so individually driven.
Very well said, Maura. It encapsulates the idea of rainbow capitalism, but at the same time adds the concept of rainbow capitalism on a whole new level. So do you think that the inclusivity of the queer community, the LGBTQIA plus community, is an effective marketing strategy in this economic world?
I'd like to say na, yes, it is effective, but at the cost of what? Like, we know that it garners headlines, especially when we think that it is positive. Like, we see headlines in a big multi-corporation suddenly goes rainbow, and then you would see headlines and like, oh, they're so LGBTQIA plus friendly. I want to buy products from there. I want to support them. But without proper research and without proper reasoning, are their causes really good? So yes, I do think it's effective, but I also think that there needs to be an improvement and a better evaluation system also on the part of, consumers themselves of what they think is genuine when it comes to representation from these kinds of marketing strategies.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of the inclusion of LGBTQIA plus community for brands and companies naman?
I think, a definite advantage is that it puts us better out there. It gives us more channels to be seen when it's been, generations long na our narratives have been erased and we've all just been used, like, kunyari in TV shows, as that extra comedic character, as a character that is used for a trauma plot point. Like, this is like more channels for us to be seen clearly. But the disadvantages of that is that there are going to be, forces that would take advantage of that kind of strategy and take advantage of yung hatak na makukuha ng headlines and makukuha ng products nila from including our community into their ideas. So if they do decide to do it and it comes from, a space of love, in a space that they do want to promote inclusivity, then good. But if it's more on the disadvantages of capitalism and commodification, then just don't, and just support those that actually do want to help.
I suppose that seeing a rainbow flag or a queer figure or any other sign makes a huge impact on a person, especially for those who are still not out yet and those that are subject to prejudice from family and peers. But on the other hand, acceptance comes from years of activism and not pride parades. And corporate institutions are not causing the social acceptance, but companies put up rainbow banners because queer culture is now socially accepted and seen as profitable. So with that, is it possible to be out and proud without holding a progressive stance on capitalism?
I think it's a little hard kasi the struggles of, for example, a minority like the LGBTQIA plus community is intersectoral. And as a minority, there are classes and there are struggles that each community faces. So if you're someone that is in support of capitalism while being out, sometimes it is damaging because you know that capitalist forces are one of the reasons that the LGBTQIA plus community struggles. Because they are commodified. They're seen as caricatures. They're not seen as actual living, breathing people. So I do think it's possible because I've seen it. But do I think it's advantageous to the community? No. I would like even when you're out and you're proud we support the ones that actually want to help us. It's just that when you're a queer person, you're more vulnerable to, choose the things that will protect you because you've been raised in that societal idea that someone's always going to be against you. So should we call out those that are still in support of capitalism despite being queer? Not necessarily, or not agad. I think we have to have a deep understanding of their situation, of their background, and also where they're coming from if you really want to progress and improve the overall genuine representation for our community.
With that, I just want to add that there is a long list of LGBTQ celebrities and politicians who do not only support LGBTQ individuals, but are actively reactionary. I think we may infer that social class influences individuals to have a progressive stance because members of the ruling class, regardless of whatever oppressed group they belong to, they will defend the system they rule. So with that, can I ask that if one accepts the premises of identity politics, is the view of rainbow capitalism a win, or is it necessary to adopt a class-based political perspective?
So I am, leaning on a more socialist perspective as an individual, not representing any organization. If we had to choose on how to uplift the community, a class-based system to do it when I want inclusivity for everyone. So as, a part of the masses, ang kaaway mo is always the ruling class. And when your representation depends on how the ruling class saves you, you question if it's really saving. You question if it's genuine representation or just their savior complex, since they're much above you and they have more resources than you. So if I could, in my dystopic society, in the things that I fight for that I think are real and I know are real as I protest for it, I'd rather do it by abolishing class altogether, going against the system, and uplifting all our minorities.
I think, in my opinion, while representation counts, even if it comes in the shape of rainbow shirt, it does not address the systemic issues of LGBTQ people face. So identity politics may be a blind alley. So we need to adopt a class-based politics that recognizes the capitalists as the oppressors and exploiters of the underprivileged and the working class.
As a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, what do you think is the importance of representation and inclusivity?
The importance of representation is, I think I've mentioned it already, but representation uplifts generations worth of queer pain and changes it so that we can achieve inclusivity. I think to achieve inclusivity, it always has to be hand in hand with representation. So this has to be in all kinds of ways, in all industries. Number one, representation in the media. Is it actual queer people that you're showing? Is it actually stories and plot lines of queer struggle? In, policies in the spaces we are in or institutions we are in, in university or in our workplace, it has to be because, the people who are governing us or leading us or creating policies for us are actual queer people who understand how painful it is to not be seen and to not be included. Like, for example, if there's no representation, could you really create a policy that would see the need of trans people? Would you know the importance of pronouns if there is no representation? So you cannot garner inclusivity without representation. And it trickles down to how we live as a society in all our circles. Because once we are not seen, we go even more backwards. And every step we do to be more seen is a step forward.
Okay, to add on that lang, Moy, as an advocate for inclusive society, the call for representation and inclusivity remains to be an important thing because it gives them a voice to stand their ground. Representation, after all, does not just mean making their existence known, but also ensuring that they are also safeguarded from all the dangers that threaten them. With that, how would you describe the current situation of the LGBTQIA plus community in the society we live in today?
It needs work. It needs a lot of work, are my thoughts on it. So, for example, the SOGI bill has gone through a lot of sessions for approval. And then before that, during the fights for SOGI bill, Pride 10 happened, where 10 queer individuals just, relaying their thoughts and fighting for this bill were illegally detained. So in the outside society, we see that there is so much more to be improved upon. We still have a lot of shows that put queer individuals in such a negative light. Deal as you. We can say that it is safer. We can say now we have policies na focus on safe spaces. We can say na the recently established bathrooms that are non-genderized are a step towards the right directions, or like using or being able to use our pronouns in Canvas are good directions. And sure, that those are great steps, but those are still within university. Not everyone is in DLSU. Not everyone is in a safe space. And even if you are in DLSU, you still go home. So if your home life is not inclusive, if your home life is so discriminatory to you and abusive to you as a queer individual, then that still means that society still needs work. So we need a lot of work on that. I think the government should implement more inclusive policies that includes the voices of the queer community and not keep the narrative that we are someone that is illegal to be alive or that activism is wrong, because queer individuals are one of the loudest when it comes to activism because they know their struggle and they want that laid out into the world.
To add on that, Moy, a lot has changed throughout the years, no, in terms of the acceptance of the LGBTQIA plus community in the society. Yet, the glaring truth that they are still far from proper representation and inclusivity remains. There are still cases of discrimination against those who are part of the community in places such as schools, workplace, and even homes.
Yes, Mika, no? So, yeah, after everything, no? Like, we tackled yung experiences of the LGBTQIA plus community on a local level, on a university-wide level, no? And even national level, no? So, now, do you think it is important to call out brands and companies that practice rainbow capitalism?
Yes, I do. Because the more that we use our voice to call out those that, take advantage of queer communities, the more we set an example of how we must not use these kinds of practices just to gain profit. And, there will be people who say na, oh, na-represent ka na nga, ayaw mo pa. But if it doesn't genuinely help me, I don't want your representation. Because your representation is for your own selfish gain, and I gain nothing from it. So, useless trend at the end of the day.
I agree, no? Like, right now, it's very hard to recognize if a person, like in general, no? Very hard to recognize if a person is being genuine or they're doing something out of selfish gain. So, in our world today, so would you say that it is possible to separate performativity or yun nga, yung rainbow capitalism from the recognition of genuine activism?
I think it is possible naman when we uplift education. I think when we uplift education, we give more means for individuals to critically think for themselves what is performative and what is genuine. Kasi marketing strategies are research based and marketing strategies are used so that it is effective. So when someone is a victim of like falling for the ploys of rainbow capitalism, we can't always blame them because they lack the resources to know how to change it. So if we uplift the educational sector better and give better curriculums on what minorities really look for in being represented, what voices really need that amplification, then it's more of a societal scale of a change that we can do.
Very well said. So, of course, we know that rainbow capitalism comes with monetary gains. How can we motivate brands and companies towards genuine activism?
Brands are more inclined to change their ways and to be more genuine when they know the people need it. So if we uplift more voices and we empower more people to speak up about our needs within the community, our needs as queer individuals to be heard, then I think that's a great step. But it also depends on how, the country will change when it comes to treating queer individuals. Because corporations want to profit. And if they think that they cannot profit off our community, or they will be, for example, red tagged if they support the queer community, then most likely they're not going to do a step for it. But if we collectively, garner more efforts in fighting for this community, then there are more chances for them to change their ways.
A very socialist perspective, which I agree naman. Personally, I agree naman. So, to wrap up everything, so, what is your message to the queer community amidst their experiences of rainbow capitalism?
Yeah. My message is that I am very sorry that until now, you feel the misrepresentation given to you. I am very sorry that you see your identity being abused by such forces that do not know your struggle. But I want you to know that I stand alongside you. I fight with you in changing the tides, in changing our current society to see us more, to represent us more, and for everything to change in knowing that the queer community is valid and seen. We are not an extra thought to be put in another corporation cycle. We are not another ploy to be used as a means for profit. We are people, and the queer individuals know how much pain we have gone through, so we deserve so much. And I really hope you hang on there. And I know and I trust that this nation will change. And I trust that there will always be people, even those that are allies, that fight alongside us to change everything.
Even now, the LGBTQ community faces social disadvantages. There is no doubt that their community still frequently deals with difficulties like bullying and harassment. We fail to see how similar we are to one another. LGBT people are flawed and wonderful human beings just like the rest of us.
As a member of the dominant group, we need to take advantage in promoting diversity and inclusion for them. Treating everyone equally is not only morally correct, but it is also a practical method to build a society in which everyone is respected, appreciated, and supported. Also, we need to speak out for equality and be an ally of the LGBT community.
We need to also take in mind that in order to provide them an inclusive and diverse environment, as human beings, we must be aware of our own judgments and biases. It's one of the simplest ways of ensuring a well and safe environment for everyone.
To add on that, Nika, making them voice out on their own is one way also to say that we accept them, that they are important just like everyone else. For them and everyone else, representation does not matter on its own without good representation because they are afraid to be judged by other people.
We also must recognize that marginalization and oppression are institutional and are imposed by the government, religion, and society as well as an individual level. The problem is much more complex than just persuading individuals to keep their prejudice to themselves.
I agree on that, Justice. The government and different institutions play an important role in promoting inclusivity within the LGBTQIA plus community by making different laws or including them in the beneficiaries of a project. Usually kasi they're stating men and women, but how about the LGBTQIA plus community?
Also, no, sexual preferences have historically become targets of negative social norms. With this, education can go a long way, like talking to people about proper terminologies, using pronouns, and keeping in mind that they're just human beings like us.
With the context of rainbow capitalism naman, just like what our guest stated, Miss Moira, calling out companies is one way to stop rainbow capitalism because they're not as inclusive as they think they are, because they are just doing that for the profit.
As a socioeconomic phenomenon, rainbow capitalism has indeed become more and more prominent and has been gaining rhetorical relevance in LGBTQ-accepted Western societies, as well as some emerging economies in Asia, wherein the inclusion of the LGBTQIA+ population may be a successful marketing tactic as it can result in a larger and more diversified client base and improve the company's reputation, especially among younger consumers.
China has in fact been following that path, where the rainbow economy of the nation is presently estimated to be worth 300 billion US dollars annually, ranking it the third biggest in the world after that of Europe and the United States. Worldwide, around 3 trillion US dollars is estimated to be spent annually by the LGBTQ population. So with this, it functions as an alternate economic drive as well as a social force, ultimately increasing the prominence of the LGBTQ people in mainstream society to a certain point.
But you know what? Despite the economic growth, we should remember that individuals from different backgrounds to maintain diversity isn't sustainable without a culture of inclusion that truly welcomes all individuals for who they are and encourages everyone to succeed. That is why several academics and LGBTQIA+ activists, including the queer theorists, are challenging its veracity and contentious effects from a critical standpoint.
Very much agreed, Jasmine. From the lens of queer theory, rainbow capitalism is viewed as a normative system that reinforces the present gendered inequality while creating new stereotypes for the LGBTQ individuals. The queer theory arose from a number of post-structuralist ideas that called into question categories and social identities. The theory highlights the performative nature of genders under normative conditions, which critiques the created gender norms, which are the binarism of masculinity and femininity, along with heterosexuality and homosexuality.
The arguments over rainbow capitalism are multifaceted, no? Making it almost impossible to establish a clear black and white conclusion. Since capitalism isn't going away anytime now, perhaps instead of debating whether it is right or evil, we could instead act on how to change it if it is in fact a manifestation driven solely by corrupt motives.
I know, unfortunately, it would be an act of injustice to discard LGBTQ activism due to the inevitable commodification of any ideology or socio-political movement in a predominantly capitalist world.
So our discussion today has been a meaningful and insightful one. But before we end this episode, guys, we want to leave you with our hashtag So Good Words of the Day for our viewers and listeners to ponder on. It takes no compromise to give people their rights. It takes no money to respect the individual. It takes no political deal to give people freedom. And it takes no survey to remove repression. That is by Harvey Milk. This has been Joshua.
And I'm Mika.
This has been Justice.
This is Jasmine.
And this is Luis. And that's it for hashtag So Good Vibes. Stay tuned for our next episode. Goodbye.
Bye.